yeah, it's the Matt Kwasiborski show calling you live and direct from a chilly night but clear night here in Washington, D.C. as we get through a storm. Didn't really hit Washington area, but may have hit John's area up in Brigantine, New Jersey, which is just a suburb just north of Atlantic City. John, welcome back to the show.
Thanks again, Matt. Great to see you. Great to hear from you.
Yeah, before we get started, I got breaking news, John.
Oh, boy.
The Eagles have brought back a fan favorite and a key player to the Eagles defense on their most recent Super Bowl run. Did you hear about this?
Is this Fletcher Cox?
Fletcher Cox is back, baby. 1 year, $10 million for a part-time defensive tackle at this point in his career.
Well, it's official. Howie Roseman's still drunk.
Howie Roseman, wow, coming from the biggest Howie Roseman supporter I know, you think that he is still being drunk. That is quite interesting. We'll dive into that as well, but this is the Matt Kwasiborski show. Just want to thank Al Gore for inventing the internet. Want to thank our loyal listeners out there. This is the first sports podcast that I've done, and that is the other thing that I have to admit. John, got to admit it to you, I've not done a sports podcast since the Eagles lost in the Super Bowl. Haven't been able to watch the film, break it down, or even talk about it for that point. I know that you have with the Forfeit guys. Shout out to the Forfeit podcast. So how has been your sort of recovery from that?
Well, a loss never. You never get over a loss, right? I mean, it's one of those things, especially in the Super Bowl. It reminded me a little bit of 2005, as I think we've texted back and forth.
Yeah.
It hurts. Especially knowing how close we were. We were a couple plays away from, really, having a Super Bowl trophy come back to Philadelphia. But it never goes away. Now that I think free agency is kind of ramping up, you kind of start to forget about it a little bit and you're on to the next season. But there's always that little scab that, or scar basically that is going to remind you of that game. So I'll never get over it. It was a winnable game. It wasn't one of those ones where we got blown out, thankfully. So,
no.
On to the season.
Yeah, on to the season. Yeah, for me it was. It's just tough when you had a 10-point lead at halftime. It looked like you're winning. You got this game comfortably, and then I remember we did the pregame podcast or the forecast for the Super Bowl, and I said the coaching was my one concern. Not that I don't think Nick Sirianni and his staff at that time were bad coaches, just more or less the experience of Andy Reid being there, done that, and they got out coached a little bit there, and the field really sucked. I mean, that was sad to see the Eagles, and I know the Chiefs had a play on it, I get that, but the pass rush being just neutralized because of that field was just, that was our bread and butter, the whole strategy to our defense all year long. When you have 70 sacks and no one gets sacked in the Super Bowl, it was that was disappointing. That was heartbreaking.
It's a culmination of a lot of things, right? It's the field. That's probably the last thing on the list as far as like ranking the things that hurt.
Sure.
But Jalen Hurts fumbling, turning that back into 7 points. Generally speaking, when that happens, hopefully somebody lays on it and you get the ball or stop them or only give up a field goal. They got an easy 7 there. Yeah. The holding at the end of the game, ticky-tack call. And then just not, like you said, not being able to get a sack on Mahomes or being able to stop him from running after he's been on a bad leg. And also, I think one thing that we'll probably talk about tonight, our secondary and our defense not being able to contain what I would call C and B level receivers.
Yeah, that was a big point of that, and that's goes back a little bit to the pass rush. They're able to get some pressure on there. They're able to make Mahomes uncomfortable. They did in the first half, not getting the sacks, but he didn't have a great first half. But it was all about ball control, too. I think the Eagles only had the ball, 3 or 4 possessions in the second half, if that. Kansas City just kind of played both teams. Their best defense all year has been their offense and ball control. And the Eagles controlled the ball in the first half, and the Chiefs controlled in the second half. And, you get that bad penalty, which set the Chiefs up be able to kick the game-winning field goal at the end of the game instead of kicking it and giving the Eagles a chance to have the ball back with probably like a minute and a half to see what Jalen Hurts could have done. Been there, done that. To me, it also culminates with the Phillies loss in the World Series. the Union lost that day, the soccer team lost that day. I'm not a huge Union fan, but when you lose 2 championships on one day, and then you get the stat coming out, was it yesterday? It was the first time there's been no Philadelphia area teams in the NCAA since 1977, John. I was only 1 year old. You weren't even born yet, I don't think. It's the first time since then, and that's kind of like it. But at the same token, the Phillies were in the World Series, surprisingly. This Eagles season was a surprise. Maybe it wasn't a surprise in the Super Bowl by November, but it was a surprise. And the Sixers are still relevant. We can maybe put into them a little bit if we get some time. But, it's time to move on. Nick Sirianni lost his 2 coordinators, lost a couple other coaches. So it is new, and it's true in sports. We can kind of get hung up on old players and coaches, and we build affinities for these guys over a season. And, it hits hard in the head when those guys don't return. And in fact, the other news today that came out around 2-3 o'clock is the Eagles are releasing Darius Slay, who we're going to go into why you're not surprised, but you got to look at Darius as the team captain on defense, a vocal leader back there, and also his wife. His wife was super active, giving away free tickets to the games every week, kind of hanging out with the Eagles fans in the tailgates. You don't see players' wives really do that, and they really embrace the city of Philadelphia, much like the rest of the team has. But now Darius Slay is going to be released, but it's not surprising to you. So I want to hear why you think that you're not surprised, or that you called the fact that the Eagles were getting rid of Darius Slay either via a trade, which he had a chance to do, or just outright release.
Well, I think one of the reasons why is you sort of, in the beginning of free agency, felt a lot of the discussion going on from Slay was that he wanted a long-term deal, or to extend his deal. When that starts to happen, you always get into muddy waters, especially knowing he's a 32-year-old corner who, listen, thank you very much for your service. I really appreciate all he's done, but he hasn't been that wow factor, I believe, ever since that he came here. Yes, has he been serviceable? Great. But making 3 years, $50 million, I expect a little bit more from my corner. That being said, there's discussions now how maybe the Eagles put it out there that he could go out and ask for, or see what the market was for a trade. I don't know if that was kind of just optics and kind of the idea of like, go ahead, go see, or was that optics saying Darius doesn't want to be here? Let's start to get the fan base, around the fact that, let it hurt less. The fact that there were things coming out about, Dallas interested, that kind of got shot down, and then you see Stephon Gilmore get traded from the Colts to the Cowboys for a 5th round. I think it was a 5th round pick.
Yeah.
You really kind of understood where the market was, and I mean, I would have taken Stephon Gilmore for a 5th round pick. You know what I mean? I don't know what his contract is. Right. I don't know. Probably right now we're cash strapped, so we can't go out and give you 3 years guaranteed money. It's just not something that this organization is going to do for a 32-year-old cornerback.
Right.
Knowing that now seeing Bradbury signed, it's very interesting to me because he's only 29. Mm-hmm. But I mean, he's not far off at the end of his career. He'll be where Slay is at now. Mm-hmm. But there's also sort of this conspiracy theorist mind in me that maybe they release him and pull the Fletcher Cox deal, where they release him and then they re-sign him. So we shall see. I just think that they're knowing number 10 pick in the draft, knowing what's there. Yep. They can draft a corner, probably fill that hole, but not fill it to his capacity. Yep. Because he's a talented player, no doubt. But this team has to get younger and has to get cheaper. Yep. And I think that was the reason why we saw what happened with him today.
Yeah, it's great points that you bring up. Just to give some background on Slay, he was due a cap hit of $26 million this year, which is an unseemly amount for a 32-year-old cornerback. 17 of that was in his base salary, and I guess the other $9 million spread over the signing bonuses. The Eagles did give a chance for him to explore the market. They tried to restructure. It didn't seem like they were able to agree, which is really odd because the Eagles have had a solid history of restructuring deals with guys that they won here and who want to be here. But an interesting stat that I saw that in the first 7 or 8 games, Slay was like in the top 10 of cornerbacks, like ranked, with completion percentage against him. Then in the last 8 games, he was ranked the 65th overall cornerback, absolutely worst in the league. He gave up 71.1% completion percentage. Basically, quarterbacks were completing 71% of their throws against him in the second part of the year, and that is no one. If you're going to give up that, I mean, we're talking like there are horrible, horrible numbers, and I don't understand why he dropped off so bad. I mean, I remember in the middle of the season they said maybe he had an ankle injury, and maybe that played a factor. Maybe age played a factor in it. I don't know, but that 65th overall ranking was to me really an eye opener, and it would be hard to justify paying him $65 million when you do. Sorry, not $65 million, $26 million cap hit. And plus, we still have one more fan favorite out there that's younger, that's better, that has not been signed. And this could have been a prelude to getting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, whatever his J's are, signed, who's still out there. So kind of surprisingly at this point. What are your thoughts about Johnson Gardner coming back? Chauncey, let's call him, because I can't get his...
What is it, CJG? It's hard to...
CJGJ or something like that? Yeah.
The acronym is kind of tough.
Yeah.
I find it surprising, knowing the Fletcher Cox news, that there's another $10 million that probably could have went to, re-signing CJ if they're that far off. But I do understand that, defensive line depth is very important, and from what I understand in some of the things that I've seen, Fletcher Cox is pretty cheap at $10 million compared to a couple other defensive linemen out there. I would love to have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back. The only thing that concerns me at this point again is money. The talent's there. He had a great year. Do I think he's going to have that great of a year next year? I mean, we can only hope if he re-signed, but was it his peak? I don't know, but he's definitely played into the contract that I think he's looking for. I also think that watching Jesse Bates sign with Atlanta for I think close to 14 million, 16 million, 18 million.
Yeah, I was just looking that up. Yep.
Anywhere in that range, I think sort of set the market. But the longer, and you might have even said this, the longer that this goes on, the more it benefits the Eagles to actually re-sign him, right? Because you don't want this to draw out. I mean, this is the third day of free agency, second day of free agency. So the more it draws out, the better it is for the Eagles in that aspect. Losing Marcus Epps at this point, if you lose Gardner-Johnson, me and you might be playing safety. So, again, we go back to getting younger and getting cheaper.
Yep.
We do have the number 10 pick in the draft. Do I think that we should draft a safety at number 10? No. But, there's available players there that, in the first round, second round, third round, that we could probably get a safety. But, again, we usually use 2 safeties, right?
Yeah.
Is Blankenship or Zach McPherson or I'm sure another name that I don't know off the top of my head off the depth chart. Is that enough of a filler? I mean, Blankenship had some good. The Green Bay game was a great game for him.
Yeah.
But can you do that consistently? And he's like super cheap. But I think going into this offseason, CJ was probably your top priority. I think that this Darius Slay news is kind of like the gut punch a little bit, but again, cheaper and younger.
Yeah, you bring up some good points. Get cheaper and younger. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson traded from the Saints. We got him at the end of the year. The Saints fans were pissed that he was traded to the Eagles, by the way. A lot of my friends, being from or having lived in New Orleans, have a lot of Saints fans. They didn't understand that trade because they didn't have to get rid of him last year. They could have kept him. So he gets traded to the Eagles, leads the league in interceptions, plays phenomenally, does suffer the lacerated kidney, which is a kind of a strange injury, but played well when he came back towards the playoffs. I think he did miss the rest of the regular season. In comparison, Jesse Bates, you bring up, who was the All-Pro Cincinnati Bengals safety, who they lost both safeties, by the way. They lost Von Bell as well, but Jesse Bates was franchised last year and played under the franchise tag for the Bengals, then test the market. The Falcons did sign him, 4 years, $64 million, 36 of that guaranteed of the 4 years, and he gets $23 million in this year. So if you're looking at Johnson Gardner, who many people that rank the free agents by their ranks, some of them had them right around the same top 7 overall free agents. Some of them had CJC a little higher than Bates. I think that's mainly because he played in Philly and was in the Super Bowl. I don't take anything away from him. Cincinnati's not exactly a media mecca, first of all. Second of all, they're not known for their defense, although the defense is damn good in Cincinnati. So I think CJC is looking at that contract. Eagles obviously are looking at that contract. Von Bell also signed with the Panthers, but he was way down the list in terms of rankings. And it's a great comparison. He hasn't signed with anybody. And when I was looking at Twitter today, a lot of Bengals fans want him because A, they have no safeties right now.
Yeah, they'd be lucky to have us.
Yeah, B, he goes to another great team with a lot of young offensive players in Joe Burrow et al. There. I think him not signing points not to him misreading the market, but I think it points to him that the Eagles are making a real push to get him back, trying to maybe say, you know what, this is a great team. You might not get the most money from us guaranteed or whatever it is, or the most what you're looking for, but we are going to pay you and take care of you. We want you here. But you're right, the Fletcher Cox 1 year $10 million deal, much like the Jason Kelsey deal, it's just, they're kind of lifers. But I thought Cox kind of was at the end of the line with the Eagles, and he got no love out there. So he went from $16 million the year before to $12 million to $10 million. But we also lost Hargrave, so you got to someone's got to play defensive tackle in there. And to go to your point about the depth behind Marcus Epps is gone. Josiah Scott, who Darius Slay had a lot of criticism about, 3rd and 30, came out on Twitter and kind of said it's didn't take the blame for that, which may have got under Howie's skin a little bit. And then after that, it really drops off. Reed Blankenship did. He was an undrafted free agent, had a great end of the year. But undrafted free agents, you're not expecting anything. So when they make great plays, oh wow, we got the next whatever starting safety here. Well, we don't know that yet, and you're right. But long story short, I do think that Darius Slay, I'm hoping, is good news for CJC to come back, because he's not with anybody else right now.
Right. The other thing too to look at when you start to look at the cap situation, the one thing I was surprised that hasn't happened yet is the Lane Johnson restructure, because looking at the cap hit, $26 million this year for Darius Slay, $24 million for Lane Johnson here.
Lane.
I mean, you're looking at 11 and 10% of the total overall cap. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you could, I don't know how. I'm not a money guy. I don't know if you could give Lane Johnson $12 million, write him a check, and it's less of a cap hit. I don't know, but it feels kind of odd that you're giving there's 1 year 14 and change to Jason Kelsey, 1 year and $10 million to Fletcher Cox, 1 year $2 million for Rashad Penny. So you're already at $30 million there, tied up in 1 year. I don't know if that sort of paves the way for 2024, looking 2 years down the line and being okay, you're going to have a $50 million quarterback, and a lot of these guys are coming off the books, and then you can kind of go a little bit more ham on signings. But as of right now, our defense, without Slay, it doesn't look as good, but it all depends on what they can do to fill that hole or need.
Yeah.
If they go out and they say they stay at 10 and they pick up Christian Gonzalez or Devin Witherspoon, people hopefully forget about the Darius Slay hole real quick. If you go out and you draft Jalen Carter, I would wonder what we're doing June 1st for our cornerback. So it'll be interesting to see. I also think there's way more holes in this team that other people think. And I think that's one of the reasons why I joke around about the Howie drunk thing. Saw that video of him and Jason Kelsey drinking tequila together, and I was really against the Jason Kelsey coming back.
Whoa, John!
Really against it.
Against him coming back?
Listen, I love Jason Kelsey. He's a Hall of Famer. All Eagles great.
Yeah.
But at some point, we have to get younger. And you drafted his replacement. His replacement didn't get to play a lot this year. He played a little bit in the preseason, so that was kind of cool. And he showed things. But again, like, what are you going to do next year? Next year, you're at the whim of, is Jason Kelsey coming back again? And you're going to keep doing this over and over again. And while I respect him as a player and him as a person, and he deserves that right to I guess the right of first refusal, but you're basically kind of creating the same problem year after year that we're trying to get out of.
Right.
And I think part of it is because the fan base falls in love with people so much, and I'm a perfect example of someone who falls in love with, gets caught up in the fantasy of sports. But when you look at, again, paying him top center money when at any moment he could decide to retire, it's a little hard for me. You're watching what's going on with Aaron Rodgers right now, and he's basically handcuffing two teams in the NFL, which is odd to me. It's like the first time ever in the NFL this happening, and it's not great for the NFL, in my opinion.
No,
and not that Jason Kelsey would do that, but the fact that it's like year by year, minute by minute, is this guy going to retire? Does this guy want to be here? It leaves you like wondering after every season, and it's not a comfortable place to be. But
yeah.
Minority.
Well, I'd say yes and no. First of all, it seems like if you go to the defensive side of the ball, I pulled up Lane Johnson's contract, which is a very interesting contract, by the way. But to go to the defensive, we lost a lot. We lost our two starting linebackers. We lost Hargrave, who was arguably our most consistent defensive lineman, i.e. he could play the entire game where Fletcher was kind of breaking down. He couldn't last or BG. Those are big losses. Bradbury coming back, it didn't surprise me as much as other people. The amount of money that Bradbury signed for a lot less than I thought he would have gotten out on the open market. Again, when you did the NFL, looking at NFL TV, the free agent rankings, like he was number 4, of overall free agents. Was CJC was number 3, and he took a team friendly deal, came back, all that good, said all the right things, and was the more consistent cornerback down the line. I think what plays out in the Jason Kelsey is the larger, bigger picture future of the Eagles, which is whose contract.
I'm confused.
So when you look at, when you say, okay, Jason Kelsey's kind of holding us hostage year after year. Okay, Lane Johnson has come out, said this year. Now who knows? He said, I might only have 2 years left, right? But there is going to be one player that deserves a contract, and that is going to be something that Eagles fans have never seen before since the days of Donovan. And whose contract is that?
Jalen Hurts.
Right.
So you could argue Michael Vick too at some point, but yeah.
Well, in terms of sheer percentage of cap hit, you're going to see Jalen Hurts, looking at what Lamar Jackson apparently turned down, which was quite scary, in my opinion, guaranteed money. Then I think you're going to see, okay, Hurts has his contract. We're going to have to, phase out Kelsey. Might have to phase out Lane Johnson. In terms of them moving on, but I think if you still have Jalen was on his rookie year, and Kelsey was an All-Pro this year. I mean, it's hard to turn that down, to turn that over to a third-year player who definitely looks like the heir apparent there at center. But I think if you can get him back, $14 million's a lot, but it's not handcuffing you. Apparently, I don't know.
I mean, again, if you look at, and we play the crystal ball, and we look at 3 days from now, CJ signs with the Saints for $2 more million or $10 more million, name a number, and that money could have gone to him, then I I get concerned.
Yeah,
I understand how valuable Jason Kelce is. Don't get me wrong. I'm not downplaying it.
Mm-hmm.
But
no.
when we were always taught there's a business side of it and then there's a football side of it.
Right.
And when it comes to this time of the year, like the season's over. We didn't win the Super Bowl. We got damn close. It didn't work out. And I've had arguments with numerous people regarding what happened what happened in 18 after the 17 season.
Yeah.
And Howie or the organization said we're going to go all in again. And when they went all in again and they didn't get there, it really hurt them.
Yeah.
And I just hope that we learned from that mistake. It was a hell of an effort. We were a throwaway to get to that NFC Championship game, but it's hard to predict everything that's going on. But you can sort of look at what this team has done and they're very predictable. I think the Eagles, they're very predictable when it comes to the salary stuff. Where it becomes unpredictable is where they are going to mix up their. I think sometimes they try to outsmart themselves, and I think that's where it gets them in trouble. So we'll see. We'll see if the who knows in 20 minutes Darius Slay could resign for less money or whatever
right.
and change my opinion. But as of right now, I think the motto for this team is to get younger, get cheaper. And then, like exactly you're saying, you're going to pay Jalen Hurts close to $50 million a year. You're going to have to do. It's going to hurt this team, and it sounds terrible to say that, but what else do you do? You mentioned he's got a rookie contract. Would you play on a rookie contract this year if you're him?
Well, I mean, even if he signs an extension, it wouldn't go into effect till the 2024 season.
Okay.
Right. So that's like with Carson Wentz. You remember we signed him to that huge, 4-year, whatever it was, the 4-year, $128 million deal, but that never affected. That really didn't go into effect till after we traded him in terms of the dead money. I get that. I don't understand. I don't see Jalen Hurts holding out. I mean, for that. Plus, does he have 2 years? Or I think I read that only the first round draft picks like Joe Burrow or Josh Allen, they only get that 5th year. The second round picks only get 4 years. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so this would be Jalen Hurts' last year. I'm confident an extension that will be worked out before. It'll either be before the season or very early in the season. I don't think they're going to go into the season with Jalen Hurts playing, on his last deal. Or he might just say, I'm not signing anything. I want to go into the open market. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes there either. When he's looking in there,
That's what I worry about. Although I will say this. We've never really had a quarterback. We haven't had a long, and you just mentioned this, since McNabb probably. We haven't had an issue like this for a long time, which is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, to be honest with you. We gave Carson Wentz all that money, and that turned out to be not a great idea.
No.
We gave McNabb a bunch of money, which turned out to be in all intents and purposes, I respect what he did with this franchise. That was a pretty good deal. Michael Vick, I don't know, really didn't pan out, but it was worth a flyer. So giving Jalen Hurts the money, I think he deserves it 100%. He's the only one that's gotten him to the Super Bowl in a rookie contract. So I mean that's got something to say about it. He's young. I like everything he says. He's like a poised man. Like nothing bothers him. I say give him all the money, but selfish me says give him all the money, everything he wants. Give him half the team. I know that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. I think the Jalen contract's a good conversation for another time. It's good that we touched on it to hit the base. I want to kind of keep with a little bit of the free agencies. But we talked about Lane Johnson. His contract for coming into 2023, it'll be his base salary will be $14.1 million with a $9.7 million bonus. So he's going to count 10.3% against the cap. But his base salary since 2020 has been no more than $1.1 million. So, for example, last season, 32 years. He only counted 4.9 against the cap, 1.12 million base salary with the same signing bonus or prorated bonus of 9.78 million. But this year it does jump to 13 million next year base salary I'm talking about, and then 2025 up to 16 million. So he probably won't be around to see those numbers. But this year his cap hit does jump up to from basically 5% to 10%. In 1 year, and that's a huge hit for one player. So that is a good point to bring up. Like, what are they do? Are they going to try to restructure Lane? He has restructured. He might just say, you know what, I'm not restructuring. Do what you want with me. I'm still going to come in, and he's not going to like half-ass it. That we know that.
Right. He definitely. It's a great point. He's been one of the ones that every year they're kind of like, okay, can we write you a $6 million check? And he's like, sure.
Yeah.
I personally, I'd like to know a little bit more. How this works. Does it work out where he says, hey, listen, you have a $14 million base salary this year, we'll give you a bonus of $6 million or $13 million, and then it brings your base down to 1 and you just ride off in the sunset with 13. I don't know how that works. I'd love to know more. I'm not a capologist. I'll tell you another thing that I wanted to tell you that I had thought about tonight when I was sitting here eating dinner. We love Hard Knocks, right? Wouldn't it be great to do a Hard Knocks of like free agency? Like that's what I want to see. I want to see the behind the scenes of we see when Hard Knocks comes on, you see the behind the scenes of these rookies trying to make a team.
Yeah.
Undrafted guys, how the team's starting to build in the preseason. I would love to see a Hard Knocks. If anyone from HBO or NFL Films is listening, which I'm sure they are, they should do a free agency Hard Knocks and really like listen in on phone conversations and like just be a fly on the wall in those GM offices. I think that'd be great.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very interesting point to do a Hard Knocks. If you're listening to the show for the first time, Hard Knocks is a show that basically follows teams around during training camp, which is usually August, mostly of July, end of July, early all the way through August. And this year they did one in season for the first time with the Cardinals. And I know I only say that because I have some people out there that are trying to learn American sports. So we go into the depth there. A couple of friends that moved from Ukraine up to Canada, Vlad and his girlfriend at least up there. So we had downloads from Canada, like 14 downloads. I don't know if it was so he's promoting. Nice. He's promoting his name is Vlad. He's promoting the podcast, I guess, amongst the community up there. Segue into it. The Edmonton, Calgary area has a huge Ukrainian diaspora and has for many, many years. So he said he was letting. If you want to learn about American sports, listen to my friend Matt and John. So shout out to Vlad up there. So
shout out to Vlad.
Yeah, that's why we're explaining in that way. That would be quite interesting to do how that would be done would be, your agent's home. I guess we have to really follow the agents around. So I think some of these players are probably on the beach in, Cancun or, Spain or somewhere, and they're saying just get the deal done. So you definitely have to follow the agents around. So that is a good point. Last year at this time, the Eagles signed Hassan Reddick. And that was pretty much it. Then Kazir White came on board. Gardner Johnson came in a trade during training camp. But this year we're losing a lot. Is this something you're okay with, the losses we have? The Hargrave, T.J. Edwards, Kazir White, potentially Darius Slay, Marcus Epps. We're losing all these starters. Are you okay with that, with your youth movement theories?
So I'm okay with it, knowing that we have drafted players to fill those holes, right? You look at a guy like T.J. Edwards, who's been here for a couple years, decent player, serviceable. You drafted Nakobe Dean, right?
Yeah.
Nakobe Dean got a lot of reps in special teams. He played here or there for in not a starting role, but here and there.
Yeah.
And now's the time for the rubber to meet the road with him, right? So let's see what he's got. He was a 3rd round pick. He dropped. But the consensus would say he was probably a first round. So the youth movement started. Now's the time. Like, okay, sorry, TJ, congratulations, you got the contract. Guess what? Next man up.
Yep.
Doug Peterson. Jordan Davis, perfect example.
Yeah.
Javon Hargrave goes. Okay, Jordan Davis replaces him. Okay, great. You bring Fletcher Cox back, and I'm lukewarm on that.
Yeah.
What out? Milton Williams, he's going to get more playing time.
Yep.
Are they going to go in and when we segue here to the draft, we're going to probably talk about the defensive line. there's probably a good chance that we're drafting a defensive lineman in the first round. I would be willing to bet your money on that. So losing CJ and losing Marcus Epps, I think, is a bigger hit, because I mean, we don't have any safeties at that point. I'm not really sure if Blankenship and insert free agent name here is really going to move the needle for me.
Yeah,
you have one side of the cornerback position, nailed down with Bradbury, and then that's primarily your defense. But the other thing we're not talking about is probably 2 or 3 holes on the offense that we haven't even talked about that really need to be addressed as well. Talk a little bit about the running back situation.
Yeah.
Talking about a guy, Rashad Penny, who comes here on a $2 million prove-it deal, who's played, I think, like 16 games in the last 3 seasons.
Yep.
Again, like, great upside, but is that, it basically ruins the idea of them drafting a first-round running back, which I didn't think they were going to do anyway.
Yeah. If they do, it would be with that last pick if they keep it, the 30th overall pick. I've seen the Jahil Green, I think, from Alabama, mocked a little bit there.
Gibbs.
Sorry, not Green. Yep.
Gibbs.
Thanks for that. I mean, to go to your point with the draft, all the losses, but then the offensive line, I got, I have a theory too that you and I, we've been talking about the draft, and I'm becoming that old person where it's like, if we get the first, in the first round, I want someone that you're going to plug in for the next 7 to 10 years as a reliable, if not, high caliber starter. If you're drafting in the first 25 picks, I think that's why I was sort of against the Devonta Smith pick at the time. All right, he's kind of proven me wrong, but we'll see if he stays here after a 5-year deal. He's going to cost a lot of money down the line. But with the losses on defense, yes, you seem to the pick, the number 10 pick if they keep it, and the 30th pick if they keep it, probably lean towards defense. I do like they're going to get a stud cornerback out of there. I think either Gonzalez, I'm more in favor of Witherspoon, Gonzalez out of Oregon, or you have Joey Porter, the Penn State cornerback, who I think just local people are high on him for number 10. But I see national people picking more Gonzalez and Witherspoon. Talks about the Eagles might trade up for Jalen Carter, who probably may fall out of the top 5. I'm not sure if he does. You never know. But also, you got to look at Paris Johnson, and Northwestern has Sikorsky. I know he has a Polish name on the offensive line. The Bears, with their trade with the Panthers to drop down to 9, they need a lot of offensive line helps. They're going to get one of those 2 stud offensive linemen, and I would have no problem if the Eagles got, at 10, if they didn't go cornerback, go offensive line there. Again, to your point, we got to start replacing Kelsey. Looks like we have his replacement, but also Lane Johnson over there. We might be able to get a stud tackle. That's the way I wanted to segue into the draft.
So I guess a couple things. I would be very surprised if they stay in 10, knowing the fact that we're going to need more players, right? And younger players. I think we only have 5 or 6 picks in this draft.
Yeah.
So I can definitely see us trading back, recouping more picks to get more players to fill holes of need. As of right now, if you were to stay at 10 and the board went as, you probably could almost predict we've done this before, you and me, predicting the first 31, 32 picks. If it goes as planned, you have a big gap, I think, between what happens in 1 and 9 and what happens at 10. Because if it literally goes Bryce Young off the board, Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Stroud, Tyree Wilson, Christian Gonzalez, Richardson, I know is in there. I think Will Levis is going to be
Levis,
probably
back out of Kentucky.
Then you get Devin Witherspoon, and then past him, to your point, you're probably looking at that Northwestern kid. I'm going to
I'll look him up real quick. Yeah,
Peter Skornowski.
Yes, or Paris Johnson out of Ohio State. Yes.
Right, so you could certainly take a tackle there, offensive lineman there. I really don't think we're drafting a wide receiver at 10.
No.
No, that's not happening. And then I've heard the kid from Pittsburgh, Cansey. I've heard his name been thrown around here and there.
Defensive lineman, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it's hard to predict, but they are pretty predictable, right?
Yeah.
I think we're in agreement that you're probably taking a defensive player here.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that your offensive line, as of right now, if Sam Paulo leaves, you're plugging in Cam Jurgens at guard.
Yep.
And you have depth, that Stoutland can work with.
Yeah, and it brings back continuity, yeah.
100%. So I lean defensive side of the football, because I think that's where the value is at 10. If you told me I'm dropping down to, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, then I might feel the need to, draft a corner or something like that, depending on what happens. I don't know. Value, I can't see taking a tackle and having him sit this year. I just can't see it. To your point, I think you're getting a defensive lineman. Edge, I think your edge guys are Brandon Graham's coming back. You got Reddick, you got Sweat. Could you take an edge rusher? I don't know, maybe. Or the possibility that we haven't even talked about is, do we take our 30th pick and we package it up with our 9th pick and we move up? It's a possibility. I don't really think it's going to happen, but someone's going to listen. I mean, there are a bunch of teams up there that won quarterbacks that, you look at the Raiders, they just signed Garoppolo.
Yeah.
Do they want to pick at 7? I don't know.
Yeah.
Seattle just gave Geno Smith a boatload of money.
Yeah.
It's hard to get the 5, but, we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not really the Eagles' MO too much to trade up that far, but outside of the Carson Wentz trade, they did trade up a couple of 1 or 2 spots to get Devonta Smith. Unless they're able, if Jalen Carter is supposed to be like this all-franchise defensive lineman and he falls because of his issues or just the way the draft board's fallen, like you said, there could be a run on quarterbacks, because there's a lot of quarterback-needy teams there. That could be someone the Eagles shoot up for. With that being said, we'll see. I think, if Slay's gone, which it looks like he is, and doesn't come back, you have Bradbury. You could plug in a Witherspoon or Gonzalez over there and be fine for the next couple of years, because I do consider cornerback to be a staple, as a lot of people do, to be one of those staple things. But the Eagles, but they're known to just draft along the linemen. Do have breaking news. Another former Eagle has found a new home. Oh. Miles Sanders going down to Carolina and reuniting with Frank Reich.
Wow.
Which I love. I loved the Panthers running back Donta Foreman. He is a guy I would love to see the Eagles get. He was along with Jamal Williams, who wound up signing with the Saints. Both of those guys are big bruising backs that can get you a lot of yards. And Foreman had a great year. I'm surprised that Carolina didn't keep him, but it looks like Sanders is headed down to Carolina. So all the best to Miles.
Do you have any details on that news?
It just says right now, just agreed to a contract. It doesn't have the numbers. I'll look up a little bit while we talk about that. What are your impressions about that down in Carolina? Andy Dalton goes there. Carolina has the first overall pick. I think they also signed Hayden Hurst, who was a productive tight end coming out of San Diego, then to New England, and now with Carolina. So it looks like Frank Reich's making some big moves down there, as well as the management.
Frank Reich needs a quarterback. He always has. He went out when he was with the Colts, made the move for Rivers. Mm-hmm. That didn't work out. Made the move for Wentz. That didn't work out. Made the move for Matt Ryan. That didn't work out. So trading up to 1, I think, to be honest with you, I expected more out of that pick, but here's the thing that I don't like. You trade up for the number 1 pick, and then all you hear is, oh, they're willing to trade back down. And I'm like, well, then why did you trade up? It doesn't really make much sense to me. Now, you get the pick of the litter, which is great. But again, sign Andy Dalton. Why did you sign Andy Dalton then?
Well, why did the Eagles sign Doug Peterson in 1999? Same exact reason.
fair point. But if I'm going to take Bryce Young at number 1, he's my starting quarterback.
Sure.
100%.
Sure.
If you're going to draft Anthony Richardson, I say, okay, then Andy Dalton's going to probably start.
Yeah.
But if you're going to give all that draft capital up, you might as well, to your point, right? I and you agree that if I'm drafting a guy in the first round, I want him to be a starter. So, I'm a loss for words as what I do, but I'm taking a quarterback, and he's I got to feel really good about that position.
Yeah, but that's also, that's what you do in the NFL, right? You sign a veteran quarterback to mentor the young guy coming in. In some places, that's kind of failed. Look at Arizona. I mean, who was mentoring Kyle Murray? Was it Colt McCoy? I mean, Colt McCoy is an okay guy, but he has not a lot of success on the field, whereas you bring in Andy Dalton, who's been a starter and a backup, so he knows how to be a backup. He's not going to sulk if he's not starting. And then when he's played as a starter, he's done fairly well. He's just not been on some great teams there. So I think, it could do a lot worse than having Andy Dalton mentoring you at that point. By the way, Miles Sanders, the 4-year deal with Carolina, no numbers out on the money yet. But 4 years deal, Sanders goes down to Carolina. And, hey, Miles is another one that, great year this year, kind of disappeared in the Super Bowl. But, fantastic year, and wish him all the best down there in Carolina.
Yeah, thank you for your service. He had a lot of potential. I think he this year he played a lot better in years past. He had a career year, obviously, so he deserves to get paid. Mm-hmm. I just kind of wish that we would have got last year's Miles the previous couple of years. But he got banged up a little bit and had some issues, and it didn't work out. But again, predictability with the Eagles. We don't pay our running backs. We got $5 million, I think, tied up in running backs right now.
Right.
Chances are, like we said, they're going to probably draft one, which I can't. Which to me is like unfathomable now. I guess unless you're going to cut Penny, after training camp or something if it doesn't work out. But you got a lot of guys on your roster now. You got Trey Sermon, you have Kennedy Brooks, Gainwell, Scott, Penny. That's 5 guys. You're going to draft one, add 6.
Yeah.
You don't want to, so.
Yeah, I like Foreman. That's the guy I like to see them get. That kind of brings in that, I want to say, the Blount kind of like style of runner back there that's going to run for. He's going to be a powerful running back. Then you can bring in someone like Gainwell. I'm not a huge fan of the Penny deal, because he's not healthy and he's the same style of runner as Sanders, but Sanders, while he had his injuries, never missed that many games that Penny did. But then they only signed $1.5 million, so I think there will be another move made at the running back position. But that does look forward to the draft there. Looking at final kind of words on how you think the rest of this week may shape out for the Eagles.
The Darius Slay kind of open-ended issue needs to kind of be solved. Are they going to? They haven't officially released him. They said they're going to. But CJ, he's probably the one. I would say that everyone kind of agrees that they're kind of like waiting for him. Mm-hmm. That's the big issue to drop. As far as Eagles concerned, and probably backup quarterback is probably another one that I think we haven't discussed that I'm interested in too. But again, there's a few NFL free agent quarterbacks that I would be still interested in, but every minute by minute someone gets taken off the list. So Jacoby Brissett signed with Washington down here, and I think that's a smart move for him. There are some rumors he could come to Philadelphia, but he knew he'd just be a backup here. He has a chance to start in Washington, and he did. He's a great quarterback, a good mentoring person to have as well for Sam Howell down here. But I think he also looks at the situation. There's no way he's starting over Jalen Hurts, whereas he could push Sam Howell for that starting quarterback, especially with a coach that could be a lame duck coach. Ron Rivera is under a lot more pressure to perform and win this year than he has been, especially with new ownership that could be coming into Washington as well. So I think that's a good move for him. Marcus Mariota is still out there. Matt Ryan got released today.
or will be released by the Colts. There's not too many backup quarterbacks to sign. Like when you figure like Jared Stidham, I think was the first. Stidham was like the first backup quarterback off the board when he signed with Denver. That was kind of surprising. Minshew doesn't seem like he has any looks out there as either, so we'll see about that. Another Eagles free agent before we jump to your impressions of the league-wide free agency. Seumalo hasn't signed with anybody. And there's a lot of rumors like, he's going to get top money for a guard who had a spectacular year. And not only just a guard, he's proven himself being able to play at center, at left guard, at tackle for a little bit. Because when he was the first heir apparent to Jason Kelce with Seumalo. They knew he was a guard. I forget where he played college ball, somewhere out west. But they're like, yeah, he's a better center than he is guard, but obviously with Kelce, we're going to keep him in there. So, there might be a little rumors there that he could take that 1-year Flyer deal and come back to the Eagles.
Oregon State was Isaac Seumalo.
Yeah.
I'll take back what I just said about free agent quarterbacks. There isn't many.
Okay.
Kyle Allen. Baker Mayfield just got signed to Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Our best friend Carson Wentz. You mentioned Matt Ryan. I highly doubt Tom Brady's coming back. Marcus Mariota, Teddy Bridgewater, don't think so. Mason Rudolph, Joe Flacco, no thank you. Drew Lock, Sudfeld. Cooper. The farther I get down the list, Gardner Minshew is the second to last on the list. So I don't know. You have a quarterback who's awfully mobile, is very important to this team. We've seen it in years past. Shout out to Nick Foles. Yep. I think that the backup quarterback position is one of the most important positions in NFL franchises. I'm a little surprised that we didn't spend the money, but again, if you don't have the money, it's hard to spend the money.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Kind of dealt with the cards we have. It might be another, year of Gardner Minshew. I definitely think we draft a guy. I don't think we're going to go in with Ian Book as our backup. Shout out to Notre Dame, but I've seen worse.
Yeah, we have seen worse with the Eagles. Yeah, absolutely. Ian Book, man, there's another person the Saints were kind of upset that signed with the Eagles. Not that the Saints didn't want him, but they were not happy he went to the Eagles for sure. So he might be the backup next year. We'll see moving forward with that. Just want to close off a little bit on the Eagles since we've talked a great amount of time, 52 minutes about the Eagles. Any impressions, and I'm not trying to stop this, keep going, but any impressions going around the league of free agency for you that kind of stood out, either individual contracts, some players got overpaid, underpaid, the contracts are too much, one team making noise while other team kind of sits back and watches their roster get decimated?
I think I touched on it earlier. I think what's going on with Aaron Rodgers, the Packers, and the Jets, I think is it's laughable at this point. I think watching him sort of handcuff two organizations is borderline ridiculous. But again, I guess if you're going to accept that as the norm, if you're the Packers or the Jets, then I guess have fun going back and forth and arguing about draft picks and whoever to make up for the trade. They're the biggest one that stands out. I think Lamar's another one.
Yeah.
Who didn't want an agent. Was offered 4 years, $133 million, all of it guaranteed, and I think he's shoved his nose at it. I think he's a little nuts. I think that based on what happened last year with Deshaun Watson, that kind of screwed the quarterback market a little bit and got people thinking that that's a realistic contract when it really isn't, especially for what he's done in the league. So I think it's always the quarterbacks, right? They're the sexy, they're what the NFL's all about. We protect our quarterbacks, are the most important players. So those are the ones that I'm kind of like, okay. I was surprised that Derek Carr got it for as much as he got as well. I didn't see him. It's funny. I did a little research as to what happened with him, and apparently they were going to they were going to let him. What was it? I forget. I'm screwing up. Were they going to let him talk, or they were only going to let him talk to one team? He was like, no, this is my first time being a free agent. He was like, I want the opportunity to talk to as many people as I want. So I respect them for that. But and Jimmy G going to Josh McDaniels is kind of interesting to me. We'll see if that experiment works. I feel like Las Vegas is like another year away from really blowing up the team once again, and they're going to turn into the Jets of the AFC. The way they keep throwing money around.
Yeah. To hit your point, Rodgers said that he made the decision. He came out today on Pat McAfee's show saying he decided on the Jets on Friday and told the Packers that, and then he sort of threw the Packers under the bus, saying, "Well, they're the one holding this up." Enough of that. Like, come on, man. You gave Green Bay gave you so many great years out there, and he did great out there. Trades can't be announced. Darren Waller goes to the Giants for a third-round draft pick. I mean, that's an easy trade to announce. This Packers deal with the money tied up and the, what the compensation is unprecedented in terms of trading a remember, Tom Brady left as a free agent. This is the trade. Whereas the Packers aren't asking for a Russell Wilson type package, nor should they have the ability to demand that. But I was kind of upset when he was like, well, the Packers are the one holding this up. They're not holding anything up. The league isn't open until 4 o'clock today. If you told them they want to go to the Jets, hey, they'll get it done. You'll put a little pressure on them. Ironically, it's also with the Rodgers, it goes back to the Brett Favre. Brett Favre was year after year as he come up, and then he winds up going to the Jets, and he sucked. Then it goes to Minnesota and has a fairly decent year or two with them. As far as the other ones you bring up, the Lamar Jackson, he tweeted out that he turned down 3 or 4 years, $133 million guaranteed. Which, John, that's $44 million. If it's the 3-year 130, that's $44 million guaranteed.
Yep.
That bothers me. It bothers me because I'm not a Lamar Jackson fan. I think he's Cam Newton, just slightly different, but not that far off than Cam Newton, MVP of the league. He's always kind of, I think there's some kind of chemistry issues or some locker room issues with him that's just not really out there. Over the years, I've seen it with him. For him to turn down that amount of money, it's kind of like, that's kind of strange. You're going to make $44 million guaranteed for the next 3 years. How the hell do you not take that? If that was the case.
Yeah. I mean, again, I go back to Deshaun Watson. When you look at his contract, it kind of set the market to what to expect.
Sure.
The fact that he didn't play the last 2 years, he was injured at the end of the season.
Yeah.
This year he didn't play at the end of the season because he was hurt and banged up. It doesn't bode well to him, but I understand probably from a business decision why that may have happened. But that being said, if you're going to take the onus and negotiate for yourself, it's a fine line, man. It's a fine line, and $44 million for a guy who you can look at the stats. I don't know how many playoff games he's won,
right?
But I would probably take it. And you know what? Play the short-term game and say, okay, I'll do it for 3 years, and then after 3 years, I'm going to show you, and then I'll get my opportunity to go on the open market and get another 133,
probably
or
more,
get 200.
Exactly.
He's a young guy.
26.
He's not talented. I think the biggest problem, at least for me looking at him, is that I've never seen him with like a decent receivers.
That's probably the big point for him, yeah.
But you then turn around and you look at Patrick Mahomes, which again I think we're comparing apples to oranges. But Patrick Mahomes, you take away arguably one of the best receivers in the league in Tyreek Hill, and you fill in B and C level receivers.
Yeah. And
he still has Travis Kelce, which he tips to all time, and then there's Mark Andrews, who is probably a top 5 tight end in this league. So why is it that Patrick Mahomes can do it, but Lamar Jackson can't?
Right.
So
wow.
And I think also like the Harbaugh thing probably has something to do with it too. I think Harbaugh is one of those guys. I think you've mentioned it. We've talked before about he could probably be the next one that goes from a coaching standpoint. It just Harbaugh. fatigue.
Yeah, like we had with Andy Reid. Yeah, absolutely. And Baltimore, as a sports city, is very similar to Philadelphia, only 70 miles in difference, or 75 miles, if that, from the stadium to stadium. It kind of bothered me with Lamar. We'll see. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of his in terms of leading teams to comebacks. He's done it a few times. He's won MVPs, no doubt, and they have not surrounded him, much like Andy Reid did not surround Donovan for a number of years there. And maybe Baltimore changed. I don't. And Baltimore, and the other thing too, the Ravens aren't. They're not. It's not Dallas or Washington or Arizona or the owners want to be the stars of the show and not the players, and make boneheaded decisions based upon throwing out like Kyle Murray's contracts for one example I'll give. Dallas hasn't been in an NFC Championship game since you and I were in high school, middle school, whatever. And that's on the owners. I really do. But a couple other going away from them a little bit, I wanted to bring up one team that's mirroring our boy Dougie P. Jacksonville Jaguars went out last year and they signed a lot of free agents that worked out. That often doesn't happen. And you see the Chicago Bears pretty much following the same blueprint. They decided to build around Justin Fields, made that decision when they traded out of the number 1 overall pick down to number 9, which is a big drop off. But they got more compensation because it cost more for Carolina to move up. I like what Chicago's doing, and especially in that division, they could be the next Jacksonville Jaguars next year of the NFC.
Yeah, I mean, they're all in on Justin Fields, like you said. I think he's going to have a good year this coming up, and he's got Chase Claypool, Claypool, DJ Moore, and I'm missing the third guy. Like you said, they just spent some money on the linebackers with Edmonds and Edwards. Edmonds and Edwards. That's going to be
Edmonds and Edwards. Yeah, yeah.
But it's interesting. You talk about Justin Fields, and we talked about Aaron Rodgers sort of leaving. You look at the NFC, and there's one quarterback at the top of that list and I don't think for a long time we could sit here and say the Eagles have the best quarterback in the NFC. If you go back to, I don't think we could have ever said that.
No.
And right now, it's sure looking that way, and it's exciting because, with Aaron Rodgers leaving, and Brady leaving, 2 Hall of Famers, and everything else is kind of up in the air.
Yeah.
It's really exciting from that standpoint. You just hope that they can do what sort of the Bears are doing and build around them. Yeah. Build around their quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah, I hopefully it works out for the Bears. They've been kind of a legendary franchise. They've been down for a long time. They haven't really had any really good runs. They've always been solid. They had obviously great runs in the the 80s, but Jim McMahon was their quarterback who was a solid quarterback, don't get me wrong, won a Super Bowl, can't take that away from anybody, but he wasn't a franchise quarterback. They had the Rex Grossman years, again, nothing really to shake your head at, so hopefully they found some solid leadership in their front office with Ryan Poole. It seems like the quarterback, the coach, Eberflus, who came from the Rams, seems like he knows what he's doing. We'll see if Justin Fields works out. DJ Moore, who, by the way, was the wide receiver, I didn't realize he was from Philadelphia. Didn't know he was a local boy. Shout out to him. He goes to Chicago and leaves Carolina, which might be a better situation up there in Chicago for him. Atlanta Falcons spent a lot of money, which, again, they look like they might be tied to Desmond Ridder. They might like to see what they have in Desmond Ridder for the next couple of years. They signed Jesse Bates. We talked about him from Cincinnati. They signed a couple offensive linemen. So they're spending a little bit of money. Did you see, by the way, TJ Edwards, I think, got a 4-year deal, $11 million or maybe $11 million per year, and he's from Chicago, from Illinois. Sorry, grew up 50 miles from. Goes back, plays for a hometown team. You and I would give our probably both our testicles at this point of our life to play for the Eagles, at least for a game. But the Andre Dillard contract. Did you see what the Titans gave him?
Yeah, man.
He gets 3 years, $29 million. And what did he play? I don't even think he played 50 snaps last year or in the last 2 years.
Right.
They
definitely saw something in him, and they certainly need line help. right? But
Yeah.
you're exactly right. That's a little bit of a surprising move. It's a good point to bring up. I mean, he would have been one of those guys that I'm kind of like, that's good depth, but not obviously at that contract. I mean, that's go back to drafting. We'll draft another Dillard.
Yeah.
If anything, the last 5 years have taught me about offensive linemen is thank goodness for Jeff Stoutland, because basically every offensive lineman we've either drafted, signed as a free agent, or whatever, has either stayed and signed long-term big contracts, or they've left and they signed big contracts. So that's a testament to him.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it's one of the biggest important pieces of this team.
Yeah. I really think you see the Jeff Stoutland reputation around the league, basically getting Andre Dillard that contract, whatever Seumalo go to Vaitai. Go to Vaitai after the Super Bowl. He signs a nice deal with the Lions, but he was a backup, filled in admirably for Jason Peters, and I think that's why I'm kind of surprised Seumalo hasn't signed, just those two examples, a couple years apart. But surprising that Isaac hasn't gotten cashed in just yet. Who knows what will happen there? But you do see a lot of offensive linemen, defensive linemen getting the money. Very good safety, and Jesse Bates getting the money, much deserved there. Still some good secondary help on the market. Darius Slay becomes free this year. Bradbury signs back with the Eagles that we talked about. I want to go back to Lamar, though, and he is franchised, and teams can negotiate with him. The thing I was like, well, no one really seems to be wanting to negotiate with him because they have to give up 2 number 1 draft picks. But what about the San Francisco 49ers with Lamar? I cannot believe that they went out and signed Hargrave. They signed a couple other guys, brought back some guys, and they signed Hargrave to that big deal. And Sam Darnold signed there, by the way, and I kind of like Sam Darnold, but I have a hard time believing that Shanahan's going to go into next year being so close to the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, and Brock Purdy as his quarterbacks. I could be wrong, but Lamar Johnson going to the 49ers is the only thing where I could see a team maybe taking a chance on him.
What would they have to give up for him? 2 firsts?
That is interesting because he is franchised. You have to give up 2 first-round draft picks, but could you work out a deal where could you, if for example, it worked out where the 49ers said, you know what, we're going to give you Brandon Ayuk or maybe Trey Lance with that and take away this franchise trade where we don't have to give up the 2 number 1s right away. I don't know if that can be done. But that is a landing spot to me that's intriguing, and it goes back to your point in the NFC with Rodgers moving on to the AFC and Brady apparently retiring again. Who is left in the NFC besides Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins, who are pretty much the same exact results-wise on the field, Matthew Stafford, Super Bowl winning champion but was hurt a lot last year and is getting up there in age, and Jalen Hurts. Like, if you're the 49ers and you got all the pieces, do you take a chance on Lamar Jackson if you can work something out?
I don't know. I mean, again, I look at him and I go, what has he done? I mean, don't get me wrong, talented, gets banged up, is mobile, but what has he done? Like, it's not like he's been in 3 straight AFC championship games or he just got out of the Super Bowl. So,
yes.
And what San Francisco did to get Trey Lance, I'm kind of like, well, why would you end that experiment? Now, granted, on the other side of the ball, you're looking at the Jets doing what they did with Zach Wilson, and they're all in on Aaron Rodgers. I think it's a little different of a comparison. Hall of Famer to, I don't know what Lamar Jackson is right now in his career. It's interesting because there's no one really else out there, right?
Yeah.
Who else is out? I mean, Derek Carr was the only other person out there.
Right.
Carr, Garoppolo.
And they got rid of Garoppolo, yep.
Those were the first 2, I think, off the board.
Yep.
Baker, not moving the needle, right?
No.
So, is Jameis Winston still available? I think
that was the second contract. He signs a 1-year, $8 million deal to go back to the Saints.
I did not see that.
Yeah. Surprisingly, at the Saints, because they have Taysom Hill down there, and they use him extremely effectively. I'm surprised they did sign Winston to that deal. The thing that would hold back the 49ers, obviously, the draft capital. They gave up a lot, like you said, to Trey Lance. They traded for Christian McCaffrey Gave up a ton of draft capital that way. But at the same time, I just have a hard, again, reading the division. It's all about the now. The Eagles, clearly, when you look at all the free agent signings last year and the losses this year, Howie went all in. He went all in to hey, we got this quarterback on a rookie deal. He's in the MVP conversation. Let's get him what we can on the defensive side of the ball to make sure that that's stout. And now this year it looks like, as of now, they'll take a little bit of a step back, defensively at least. I just think that would be a great landing spot if somehow the Ravens and Lamar and the 49ers could work something out there. Like I said, Shanahan knows what he's doing as a coach. He's conservative as a coach. We saw that, and that's his reputation. But he is a solid coach and has coached a lot of good quarterbacks so far in his career.
Yeah, I think when you look at their team overall, right, spent a lot of money for Debo. They got a lot of money in Nick Bosa.
Yeah. Hargrave now.
I'm sure McCaffrey. So you're going to have a hole somewhere. You're going to be light and thin.
Sure.
It's going to be at the quarterback position based on what they've already done to get there. They obviously like Trey Lance. They obviously see something in him.
Yeah.
And the way Brock Purdy played, I don't think you can deny that.
No.
And then, the Sam Darnold thing's a little weird, but maybe, that's 3 quarterbacks. That is odd. The fact that, it's 3 of those guys, I'm like, okay, well, why are you spending that kind of money for Sam Darnold? But I guess if Brock Purdy's super cheap, he goes back to your third option, and thank you very much. He's banged up, he's injured. Maybe they know more than we know about his injury or something, but it's all going to be on Trey Lance. And if I remember correctly, did he get hurt earlier in the season or later in the season?
It was, I think, the second or third game he went out.
So he should be back ready.
Yeah.
All intents and purposes.
Yeah.
But again, he's a mobile guy.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. True. I mean, but we've seen North Dakota State quarterbacks kind of flame out pretty early on as well. So we'll see about Trey Lance. With that being said, yeah, very interesting start to we say that every year with free agency. Eagles, a lot of people predicted they would lose a ton, especially on the defensive side, and they have. We talked about Hargrave, Edwards, White, and now surprisingly Darius Slay with C.J. Gardner still out there on the free agent market. Offensively, they get signed Jason Kelce back. Defensively, we bring back the other 2 stars, Graham and Fletcher Cox. Graham more on a team-friendly deal. Cox $10 million, Kelce $14 million. Not as team-friendly, but we'll see how about that. But shifting there, we've talked ad nauseum about the NFL free agency, and since we haven't podcasted, I'm not going to use that again. If you have time, thoughts on? Do you have time?
Yeah. Always.
Yeah. Cool. Shift into who I would consider the Minnesota Vikings of the NBA. That would be the one Philadelphia 76ers. You're always high on them. And you're high on them. But we haven't talked in a while. What are you seeing, feeling, kind of coming down the stretch with Milwaukee, Boston, Sixers? Didn't really do much at the trade deadline. Got rid of Thibault, who's having a rebirth out there in Portland, as well as Brooklyn pretty much throwing in the towel.
Well, watching them right now, tied up. Well, they're up by 1 against Cleveland. They've been playing Joel Embiid, for as much as I've been critical of him in the beginning of the season and after the All-Star break, he's been playing really well. He's healthy, so he says. I don't know, he's been playing really well. The team has been winning. That's all you can ask for at this time of the season. At this point, it's a numbers game to where they want a seed. I don't think they're going to be the 1 seed. They'll probably stay a 3, maybe 2. There's a lot of tough opponents in the East, though. Milwaukee's still tough. I don't know how. We've beat the Bucks, but again, it's 1 game versus a 5 or 7 game series is a lot different. Boston, I think, is another team that is going to be hard to beat. And again, the thing about the NBA is, real NBA starts, April, June, when the playoffs start. So all this fanfare now is great. They're playing great. I can't really say anything more to them until I see them in the playoffs, because, again, I feel like it's the same chapter of the book we always read. They look great. They look okay. They're going to make the playoffs. You know, they're not in the the play-in games. They're usually within 1-8. That's a guarantee. So, what's exciting? The one thing that I'm still a little iffy about is Harden and Maxey. Maxey's still coming off the bench.
Yeah.
Harden still being Harden here and there.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing as much consistency from him.
Okay.
But again, if Joel Embiid is going to play as well as he's going to be playing consistently throughout the playoffs, I think they're a tough team to beat. If he's not consistent and you're going to look to James Harden or Maxey, I think you're going to have a hard time. So you kind of have to hope that all the chips sort of align and everyone's sort of playing their best basketball. You can't have my toes hurt.
Yeah.
I can't play this game 2, or, this, that, and the other thing. So.
Yeah, interesting. I pull up the standings. They're in third place right now, only a game behind Boston for second place. Boston's at 47-22, Sixers 45-22. So in the loss column, we're tied with them. Like I said, and that's interesting to get to that 2 seed. Cleveland's who they're playing now. Cleveland is 3 back of the Sixers. They're 7 games out. Cleveland overall. The Sixers are 4 games from Milwaukee, who's clinched a playoff berth and is the number 1 team in the NBA record-wise, and I think that's a fair assessment. So if you're looking at the playoffs, you're probably looking at a second-round matchup with Boston at this stage of the game. If the seeding plays out, of course, there's no crazy first-round upset, but there could be. Miami's lurking back there. They're not having a great season, but they're always a tough out. The Knicks are going to be a tough out. They're playing extremely well. They're 11 games over 500 right now. At 41-30, shout out to Tom Thibodeau.
Shout out to Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart together.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the Villanova guys back together. Josh Hart, man, him and Mikal Bridges. Yeah, I don't know why we ever gave up Mikal Bridges. Anyway, has Zaire Smith even played in the NBA? Anyway, we don't even, or Zaire, whatever the hell his name was that we traded up.
Zaire Smith. He got the sesame seed allergy.
Yeah. And he did suffer. It's not fair to make fun of him, but he had some weird injury situation there. But I watch this down here in Washington. Obviously, I only see the Sixers when they're on national television, and I've not been a fan of the Sixers. I'm still not over the Atlanta Hawks loss. That's 2 years ago now, because I see them as any other Sixers fan. Get me to the second round, I'll start paying attention to them, because it's been heart-wrenching, both going through this process, which is over, where we tanked on purpose. We get one good player out of it, basically, in Joel Embiid. Then we go and we trade for James Harden. That's great. Gave up a lot of depth, which I've talked ad nauseum about. The depth that we gave up. Not that we should. It's not defending Ben Simmons at all. Then I turn on. They're playing Dallas. And it's like, all right, they're losing by 4 or 5 to Dallas. All of a sudden, they're losing by like 20. They get 82 points to 2 players. I'm like, they have no wing defense at all out there. And the name of the game in the NBA is three-pointer. Those days of strong centers that we kind of grew up with, they're long gone. And I'm not saying anything that's new. It was just difficult to watch that. They just seem to just win. They have to come, like, every win just seems like it's not an easy win, whether they're playing Milwaukee, who, hey, shout out, they ended Milwaukee's 17 game winning streak, or 16, but then they had to take, who was the team they had to come back against the other night to win like 120, 119, and Joel Embiid hits that game winning shot. Like, I think that was, I don't even know who that was. It wasn't the Magic, it might have been the Pacers, I think. I mean, it's just tough to watch with them. But being said, I think this is their best chance to kind of move forward after the second round this year. I really do. They match up better with Milwaukee. I don't think Boston's going to catch them. But if Boston goes into the playoffs, kind of struggles in the first round, and we kind of get out of the first round unscathed, that could be that'll be a huge matchup. 76ers and the Celtics. Boston Johnny, who you got?
I don't know whose money am I using to bet.
Rebecca's.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against a NBA Finals participant, right?
Yeah.
You haven't sniffed it yet. It'll be hard to beat them. It's not going to be easy. It sounds cliche, but really, it's those top three teams are the teams that I would see being in the finals. Obviously, threes, one plays 8, 2 plays 7, 3 plays 6. So who's 6 right now? If you were to
Brooklyn, and they're done. They're just hanging on by a thread.
Listen, if we're sitting here in April talking about the Sixers haven't swept the Brooklyn Nets, then we don't have to worry about the second round because we're going to get our doors blown off. If you know what I mean, like that's where I'm at the point with the Sixers. Like, talk is cheap. Put up or shut up. Everyone's been reading the same book. Everyone knows what needs to happen for them to win. James Harden needs to be consistent.
Yep.
Joel Embiid needs to be healthy and dominant.
Yep.
Tyrese Maxey needs to be electrifying and game changing. And the rest of the players, Tobias Harris needs to hit a few shots when he needs to hit them, right? And then you need the rest of the guys to you need a George Niang hot streak of shooting. You need PJ Tucker to be scrappy and grab some rebounds and be an enforcer. All that stuff needs to happen.
Yeah.
And then you have to add in a little bit of luck, right? You have to add, but they have the pieces to do it. I think Doc Rivers, for as much as he gets flack for, I still think he's a good coach. It'll remain to be seen what happens with him, but it's all or nothing this year, dude.
Yeah.
It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
If they don't reach the NBA Finals, mark my words, this team will get blown up.
Yeah, I agree.
Blown up.
Yeah, I agree. Harden's a free agent this year. He's not going to take a discount. Rumors about him wanting to go back to Houston. Yeah. If he does that, do you look to trade Joel and, like you said, blow it up? Doc Rivers probably not back. So yeah, this is the year for them. I think it's their best chance. No one's really dominating the West. Denver's having a bit of a struggle right now. They don't scare you. Memphis isn't they're number 2. They don't have their star player. The third team in the West is Sacramento. I mean, that just shows you how wide open it is. Phoenix getting Kevin Durant's going to be an issue, but they've lost 3 in a row. So, yeah, we'll see with that. Don't want to dwell too much on it. Wonderful podcast, John, with you as always. We're into our 83rd minute. So I think I'm going to put an end to it right there. Great to have you back, man.
Thanks for having me as always, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Great talking to you.
Yeah, good talking to you as well. Give you my best to your family. And take us out of here with the Eagles fight song. It's Matt Kwasiborski Show calling you live and direct from Washington, D.C. Great to have John up there in Brigantine, New Jersey. Thanks again, John. Hope you have a wonderful week.
Thanks, Matt. You as well.
All right, remember to inspire the inspiration, everyone. Don't wait for the inspiration to inspire. You have a wonderful week, everybody. Goodbye.